Hello, friend. Maybe you are new to your spiritual journey, or perhaps you've been on a spiritual journey for some time, but you might have entered a phase in which you are questioning more deeply what is spirituality? What is the real purpose for you for spirituality? What is it that you're really wanting to accomplish? And then how can you know if what it is that you're doing is actually supporting you in achieving what really matters to you? So, my intention in creating this video is to share with you what it is that I've discovered in regard to this and to invite you to explore this for yourself in a way that can help you to gain more clarity so that you can be more aligned with what really matters to you and you'll have a much greater likelihood of actually achieving that. So, uh, that is my intention. And the context for this is that what I found, someone's going to give you the broad overview and then I'll give you a little bit more detail. The broad overview is that in my own journey, what I found was that for many years I was seeking very earnestly. However, I didn't realize that I hadn't really investigated to discover what it is that I really wanted. Now, maybe superficially, I thought I knew. I wanted the money. I wanted to be done with anxiety. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to be happy. I thought I kind of knew generally what I wanted, but I hadn't investigated deeply enough to have sufficient clarity in order to be able to discern whether what I was doing was actually going to help me to achieve that or not. And as a result, what I did was a lot of trying, a lot of practicing, a lot of seeking, but it didn't actually give me what it is that I really wanted. It couldn't have because I didn't have clarity about what I really wanted. So that's in a nutshell what it is that I'm inviting you to is to actually look more deeply to discover what you really truly want. And then you will have clarity that will allow you to discern whether what you're doing is aligned with that or not. Now, if that seems way too basic to you and you just think, well, duh, I already know that and do that, then maybe the rest of this video won't have any value for you. On the other hand, if you realize that, yeah, you've never really looked deeply to find out what truly do you want, not just superficially, because of course many of us have ideas superficially. We think we want the money and the relationship and to be done with this problem and that problem. But if you realize that you've never really looked deeply enough to have a really truly satisfying clarity about what you really want that will really satisfy you, not just something that will give you a temporary relief, but something that will deeply satisfy you. If you don't have that clarity, then what's going to follow in this video, I think you will find will be potentially of remarkable value. So now you know. So I don't want to bore you with too many details, but I want to give you some overview of my own journey and process and how that led me to the discovery that I have, or the discoveries that I've made up to this point in my life. So as I record this, I'm 47 years old. And in some sense, I've been on a spiritual journey my entire life, this lifetime. But in another sense, I would say that very earnestly and consciously, I began that journey when I was about 18 years old. I was going to university in Illinois at the time, and I had this kind of crisis, an existential crisis, I guess you could say, where I realized, what am I even doing? Why am I here? What's the purpose of me being in school? I really didn't understand what I was doing, what I was trying to accomplish. I didn't have a really clear vision for my life, and so I didn't know was going to school actually aligned with that or not. And I wasn't particularly happy there. So I began to investigate and ask these questions, and I didn't really know how to go about that. Um, but I came across a book by Wayne Dyer called Your Erroneous Zones, and I began to read that book. And to be honest with you, I don't think I really understood much about it, but that was something that started this process for me. And then I found a book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman, and I started reading that one. And I don't really think I took too much from either of those books of any real value. Not to say that they don't have value, but I don't think that I was in a place in my life where I was really able to understand anything or take any real value from them. But I started my journey there. Soon after that, I left Illinois and I moved to Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, there was so much. It was like this spiritual marketplace. There was so much that was on offer. It was very exciting. And I thought to myself, well, surely there's something here that's going to solve my problem, that's going to give me what it is that I'm looking for, even though I didn't really know what it is that I was looking for. And so I just was seeking and searching, and I tried all kinds of things. I became a meditator, and I was meditating, doing all kinds of different practices, TM, binaural beats, and I was very sincere and dedicated to those practices, in some sense to an extreme. And I studied all kinds of things, went to all kinds of events, yeah, I read all kinds of books, joined groups, did all the various things, and I continued with that, just adding more and more and more and more because I thought, well, somehow along the line, I'm going to find the thing. And if I just keep adding more, somehow this hodgepodge is going to add up. And one day I'll finally have whatever it is I'm looking for. And of course, at a certain point, I came up with this idea of what that would be called, and it would be called enlightenment because that sounds awfully good. That's what people are searching for. They say that's the goal. So I just said, okay, that's what I'm looking for. But again, I didn't really clearly understand what I thought that was going to mean. And when I look back on it now, what I was really hoping for was just to escape from whatever unpleasantness or unwantedness I was experiencing within myself, the stress, the anxiety, the fear, the discomfort. I was just hoping that somehow I was going to be able to get away from that. So I kept trying all these things. Now, that continued until I was 34 years old. And at that point in my life, I reached a dead end because I had pushed myself and strained and stressed myself so much that I became physically so sick that I couldn't keep it up any longer. I completely collapsed. I was so absolutely fatigued that I could not do anything. Couldn't meditate any longer. Couldn't do qigong. Couldn't do yoga. Couldn't do kirtan. Couldn't do any of the things. So this was a point in my life, in which I had to actually look more deeply at what was really going on and what it is that I really wanted. Because as I said, up to that point, I could just keep hoping that somehow it was going to work out without actually having to get clarity about what I was really aiming for. And I didn't have a three-step process or a worksheet or something that I was going through at that time. This was all just happening very organically and spontaneously within me. So it wasn't a well-defined thing. But when I'm looking back on it now and describing it to you, what I can say is that in some sense, I began to really deeply question what is it that I really want? Because I don't seem to be able to do the things that I was hoping were going to give me what I want, but I could at least look and find out what is it I really want. Because if I have just this tiny little bit of energy, maybe I could direct that to what I want, but I can't squander it any longer. I can't waste it on things that are going to promise me something, but not actually be able to deliver. And what I came to discover, but not in necessarily this kind of clear languaging, but in a very intuitive sense, what I came to discover is that what I really want is peace. The problem, though, was that I really didn't know what that meant. I mean, deep down I did, but at the surface level where I was accustomed to living my life, just trying to escape, trying to figure it out, at that level, I didn't know what peace meant. My best idea of peace at that time was that it meant an absence of everything that I didn't want. It meant an absence of fear, an absence of discomfort, an absence of anxiety. But what I was coming to discover, mostly just because I had no other choice, because I couldn't escape any longer, what I was coming to discover is that what I actually wanted was not the absence of those things, because there was a point in my life in that moment when it became abundantly clear that I wasn't always going to be able to escape from those things or think that I could escape from those things because I was never actually able to escape from them. But there would come a point when I wouldn't be able to muster the energy to keep up that 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 momentum of thinking that I'm going to be able to escape somehow. If I just try hard enough, if I'm just do the next thing, the next practice, the next workshop, if I just learn the next technique, read the next book, I couldn't keep that up. And so I realized again, not intellectually, not at a thought level, but at a very deep, intuitive, felt sense of what I'm really looking for is something that is always here, something that is able to allow all of it, something that is actually undisturbed by whatever may be coming and going, whether that's elation or fear or happiness or grief or whatever it might be. And I realized that's what I really want. So having that clarity was and is extraordinarily powerful because up to that point, I didn't realize this until then, but up to that point, I had been just hoping. I had been just thinking if I just add enough stuff, somehow it's going to work out. But the problem is that if you don't know where you're going, then how do you know which direction to go? Right? I think this is a line from in Alice in Wonderland. If you don't know something like if you don't know where you're going, then any way will do, right? And it's sort of like that. It's like, well, if I don't know where I'm going, if I don't know what I really want, then maybe I'll just try stuff. But the likelihood of just trying stuff actually giving me what I actually want is really low. And but I didn't know that because society didn't really teach me that. Society taught me, or what I learned from society was just fit in the box, just stay in the lane, do these things, think this way, behave this way. And if you're really good and really smart and really lucky, then one day you'll you'll get whatever it is that you want. But I was realizing that wasn't working for me. And in hindsight, I'd say it doesn't seem to work that well for most people. But I didn't know another way until at age 34, there I was, and I realized what I really want is what I would now call unconditional peace. It doesn't depend on anything. It's not doesn't depend on the absence of fear or anxiety. It doesn't depend upon the presence of bliss or ease or comfort. It's that which allows for all of it. So having that clarity, which again is not was not an intellectual clarity, still not really an intellectual clarity. I don't know how exactly to intellectually wrap my mind around that, but a felt sense, just an intuitive accessing or knowing that that's truly what I want. That allowed me to begin to discern what's going to actually support me in that, what's aligned with that. And what I started to realize is that pretty much everything that I had been doing up to that point, my intention in doing those things was to try to get away from something, trying to get away from the discomfort, trying to get away from the fear. And so it started to become clear that's not going to work because what I was really doing was training myself to postpone, to think if I do this now, then in the future, maybe I'll experience fulfillment. But actually, what I was doing was just training myself to always postpone. So I was just maintaining this sense of this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it, but maybe in the future. And I got really good at that, but that's not what I wanted. So then it started to become clear that what will actually help me, what will actually be aligned with that is to begin to open to and experience and allow and practice, in a sense, unconditional peace now. So that for me has been the revelation of the spiritual journey. So it's not that the all of the years up to that were wasted in a sense. They weren't, but in another sense, they were not particularly efficient because I really didn't have the clarity of what I wanted. So my invitation to you is if anything that I've shared with you is something that you can recognize for yourself, if you recognize that you really didn't have that kind of crystal clarity about what you truly want, then I believe it's very likely that actually allowing yourself to get that clarity can be powerfully transformative and supportive for you because it can allow you to let go of everything that's not aligned with that. And it can allow you to really focus in on what actually is aligned. And how might you do that? I can only make some suggestions. First thing is that if your mind suggests to you things that you want, if you ask yourself, what is it that I truly want? And if your mind suggests things to you, those things relatively might be true at that level, and that's totally fine. Personally, I'm not against money or health or harmonious relationships or any of those things. I think it's all really nice. And all of those things are in in my own experience, in my perception, those are all strategies that are designed in my thinking to deliver to me what it is that I more deeply want. So they're perfectly fine. I would rather have you know, all things being equal, if I can have the unconditional peace that I want with money or without money, I would take it with money. So I have no problem with the money and those preferences. But for me, what I found is that whatever those transient things are, the conditional things, the more superficial things, those are ultimately really for me strategies that I'm thinking are going to deliver to me what it is I more deeply want. And so if I just stay at the level of strategy, then I don't get the clarity of what I more deeply want. So my suggestion then is if those things come to your mind, I want this, I want that, I want to get rid of this, I want to solve that problem, that's totally fine. Great. And also, you could ask yourself, when I have that, what will that give me? And you can keep asking that question of whatever comes up. When I have that, what will that give me? Because that will reveal to you what it is that you're really wanting more deeply. And at a certain point in that process, there won't be any further answer to that question. For me, for example, unconditional peace. There's no what when I have unconditional peace, what will that give me? Unconditional peace. There's no further answer for me. I'm not suggesting that has to be the answer for you, but the point is, at a certain point in that process of asking, when I have that, what will that give me? There is no further answer. And you then know that that's what you really want. And you can just feel into that and just notice the truth of that for yourself. So I'm not suggesting what you should want. I'm just suggesting a process of inquiry that you can utilize for yourself in order to discover that for yourself, and you'll feel the truth of it. So it's not just an intellectual exercise. In fact, just the intellectual exercise, although there might be some value in that, it's a pretty limited value. But when you actually allow yourself to feel into it, then you're going to get clarity. I propose you'll get clarity that can be very transformative. So that's the basic suggestion that I have there. Now, once you have that clarity, then what can you do with that? And my main suggestion, I mean, what I found to be valuable is just to keep that as the the um, the organizing principle for all the choices that you make in your life. You know, whatever ideas come up, ask yourself, is this aligned with what I really want? If it is, then it's very likely that that will offer you greater satisfaction and fulfillment. And if it's not, then chances are it's probably not going to offer you greater satisfaction and fulfillment. So it's not about what you should or shouldn't do. It's not about morality or anything like that. It's just about getting that clarity for yourself about what do you really want. And nobody else can know the answer. No experts, no anybody can know the answer. Only you can. And there's no right or wrong. There's just what's truthful for you. And it's not even necessarily about getting some kind of absolute answer. It's just about getting that clarity for yourself now. And I believe it's very likely that if you really explore that, then you might find that that offers you so much more wealth and richness in your within yourself than any of the other things that you've been doing up to now. And it doesn't mean that the other things might not still have their place and their value. It's just having, in the absence of the clarity of what you really want, then you can't know. So I hope that you have found this to be valuable. Please let me know in the comments whether this has been valuable to you. I would genuinely appreciate knowing that. And also, if you have found this valuable, then I would like to also invite you to get access to the free Real Transformation Guide that I make available through my website. I'll provide the link in the description below. And what that will provide to you is a few more suggestions of some very simple and yet very powerful things that I have personally found to be enormously helpful and clarifying in the spiritual journey. And so I offer that to you. It is freely available. You can just click the link and get access to that. And that will also allow me to remain in contact with you so that I can share other valuable insights and ideas with you. Blessings to you. Take care. Bye for now.